Let's be honest, the gaming industry is currently held together with duct tape, band-aids, and crunch. For every massive hit, there's a dozen games that launch broken, boring, or chock full of frickin' monetization that ruins it. While there have been a lot of great games this year, if you think of the sheer number of not great games this year, it feels like every good one is like Moses parting the Red Sea. Freaking miracles. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on gameranx, 10 recent games that are truly miracles. Starting off with number 10, it's Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. First off, a new Prince of Persia game in 2024, somehow it happened. But what's even more shocking is that it's actually really good. Like, really good. Ubisoft's reputation was in the gutter before The Lost Crown release, so there was a lot of pessimism around it. Even if the pre-release stuff they were showing looked pretty solid. But the final product ended up being way more than that. It's an excellent Metroidvania that updated and expanded on the series in some new and exciting ways. It's also a game that bridges the Sands of Time series and the original games with a focus on platforming and navigating traps that gives it a unique feel, especially when compared to a lot of other games of this type. Back in 2024, it seemed like Ubisoft just didn't have it in them anymore to put out games like this, but thanks to the dedicated folks at Ubisoft Montpellier, I don't know how to say that name or place. I know I'm saying it wrong. I'm not French. Sorry to the French. But anyway, the folks at Ubisoft Monty Python were able to make it happen despite the publisher's focus on massive AAA open world games. Despite everything, sometimes Ubisoft developers are able to sneak out something that breaks their usual mold, like the Mario Rabbids games or the recent-ish Rayman games. The Lost Crown is another one. It's an unusual thing that you just don't expect to see from this company. It's got the polish of a big development studio, but the presentation of an indie. It's the sort of thing I wish we'd see a lot more from these big companies. Of course, the game didn't end up selling very well, so there's an argument that they have a reason for not bothering with stuff like this anymore. But here's the thing, Ubisoft did not market this game. In this case, I think it's probably a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you say, this game's not going to sell, so we're not going to push it, then it's not going to sell, because we live in a world where you have to create demand for something, and they just didn't bother. So we're never going to get a Lost Crown 2, which sucks, but at least we got this one game that manages to exceed almost all expectations. And hey, did you know that any expectations you have about how many people see this and subscribe? Probably wrong. It's actually surprisingly few. It's not just us, it's YouTube site-wide, it's a normal thing, but that's why we have to ask. Please do us a big solid and click the subscribe button. It helps us a ton in terms of getting more resources and making more videos, and we hope it helps you see stuff you want to see. Thanks a ton for clicking subscribe and enabling the bell or whatever. Let's get back to it. At number 9, it's Liza P. Bloodborne, but Pinocchio? Oh boy, could that have easily been extremely embarrassing and lame. Or maybe unintentionally horrifying, like the many, many live-action adaptations of the story, but against all odds, it's really good. Of course, it's derivative, but it's really polished and well-made, so who gives a shit? The actual innovations it brings to the formula do enough to make the game stand out in an already crowded Souls-like genre. Being able to combine weapons parts is a simple but really satisfying thing that lets you make some counterintuitive but really fun weapons. It's a little bit Sekiro and a little bit Bloodborne, but the combination works because the game is really well paced. It's got a smooth difficulty curve that normally these games lack, like to the point where it's an expectation of the genre. In general, the game's more forgiving than you'd usually see with a Souls-like. It actually gives you enough upgrade materials to level up more than one weapon, for example, lets you respec and build pretty easily. It even has, as of 2025, built-in difficulty settings. A Souls game that lets you adjust the challenge level? Has the world gone mad? No, because most of them still don't do it, so all of us tryhards out there can rest easy. What actually makes the game great is simple. It feels really good to play. The parrying, which you'll be doing a lot of, feels good to do. The enemy designs are excellent all around. The environmental design is good. The presentation is clean and solid across the board. It's just a really well-made game all around. It has the polish of a game made by old pros, but it's not. They were primarily a mobile game developer before, so the fact they were able to go from that to this is actually really impressive. They even managed to pull off the From trick of releasing DLC for the game that's better than the base game, with fun new weapons, more varied environmental design, and the best bosses in the game so far. Make no mistake, the name Lies of P is ridiculous, and I do not understand exactly why that's the name of it. I mean, yes, it's literally what Pinocchio is about. He lies, and his name starts with P, but I can think of like a number of better names. And you got to admit that some of this stuff is still pretty goofy despite how serious it's trying to be, but it just doesn't hurt the game at all. If anything, it gives it some personality, so it's appreciated, believe it or not. At number 8 is Sonic X Shadow Generations. When Sega announced they were remaking Sonic Generations, a game that didn't really need much updating, even though it's somehow already 10 years old, there was a collective kind of groan from the Sonic franchise. When they revealed they were going to do the Nintendo route and add a new side game starring Shadow, there was some excitement and a whole lot of dismissive confusion. Does anyone remember the god-awful Shadow the Hedgehog game? Sonic the Hedgehog 06? I mean, yeah, the Sonic 3 movie had Shadow, and it was really fun. But the general presence of Shadow outside Sonic Adventure 2 often is a cause for concern. So when this thing came out and somehow ended up being the best Sonic team-made game in years, it was pretty surprising. I don't want to oversell it because it's just a small add-on attached to an otherwise pretty bare-bones remaster, but the Shadow part of Sonic X Shadow Generations is very much worth it. It's probably the best boost formula game ever made, which is maybe damning it with faint praise, but it's legit a great game. The new Shadow powers are a lot of fun. The level design is better. They hit the right balance between speed and control. It's something the team struggled with for many years, and somehow with this version, they frickin' nailed it. For once, instead of trying to completely reinvent the wheel and start from scratch, they built off of a game, in this case Sonic Generations, and were able to improve on it. Please, Sonic team, just do this. Like, take the Shadow Generations model and refine it for the next Sonic game. Like, seriously, you guys have cracked boost gameplay. I talked about this back when Sonic Forces, which is a universally reviled game, came out. I said, like, there's aspects of it that showed they've figured out how to do the boost stuff. This is the evidence that that panned out. That's true. I would like them to follow this model. Just give us a bunch more awesome levels. And alternatively, you can also make Frontiers 2 that's bigger and better, because Frontiers is a frickin' monster as well. Like, you have 2 tracks to take. In fact, just do both of them. Do both things. You want to print money? You want people to love you for making great Sonic games? That's the paths. Plural. And number 7 is Black Myth Wukong. I remember reading some of the leaks about this game before release, and I mean, a lot of the time, your old pal Falcon has predictions that outpace other folks. I was right about the Switch being a massive hit, and I was right about it when people were saying it sucked ass. That's probably my claim to fame as far as that goes, but with Black Myth Wukong, I'm not gonna lie to you, I didn't believe it. All the signs pointed to Wukong being a game that would disappoint. It was a long gestating game made by a team that had never made a game of this scale before. There were a lot of little controversies and rumors swirling around the development, and for a while it seemed like it might be vaporware. Then, weeks out from release, people started saying this thing was going to have more than 100 bosses, which sounds absurd, like something a kid would say about an imaginary game. All these weird gimmicks like the extending pole and riding a cloud, it would never work in a quasi-Souls-like, right? The final product would be a mess. right? And then it came out, and by God, there really are 107 bosses. And the Madmen actually did it. They created the most absurdly, on paper, bloated action game of all time. I'd call it a work of hubris, but it's clear that these nuts just wanted to make the biggest and best game they possibly could. If anything, they went a little overboard with the bosses. There are points where this thing practically feels like a boss rush. It's just one after another. But crucially, Black Myth is a lot more than that. It doesn't fall apart at the end or get slapdash in the closing hours. Let's be serious. Much shorter games do. It's a remarkably complete game with just as much stuff between all the fights, and it feels like a full adventure. It's a game that was impossible to predict how it would turn out, so the safe assumption would be that it was going to disappoint. So the real miracle is that, man, it did it. It exceeded expectations. And number 6 is Nine Souls. This thing was one hell of a swing from Red Candle Games. Going from making psychological horror games with very little gameplay to this, it's a complete 180 in priorities that few game studios have ever actually accomplished, but these guys made it look pretty easy. Nine Souls is one of the most confident action games I've ever seen. Its inspirations are obvious with the parry-based combat and the distinct Hollow Knight silhouette of the main character, but its story and the Tau Punk style made it unique. And also the difficulty. The difficulty stands out. This game tests you. If you want to get anywhere, you need nerves of steel and lightning-fast reflexes, or more realistically, a whole lot of patience and willingness to keep trying, because you will die repeatedly. It starts off hard and only gets much tougher as it goes. Ending with one of the most brutally difficult final bosses of all time. It's not an easy game, but it is so much fun to play. It's wild how this team was able to pull off something that feels so perfect on their first try in the genre. It's a real statement of intent that shows what Red Candle is capable of. The presentation is just excellent all around. Even the story's well done. It's violent and goes to some pretty dark places despite the cute character designs, but it really works. It's just the right mix of endearing and depressing. It's one of those indie games that swings way above its punching weight, from the presentation to the design, and it's also one of the rare games where the Metacritic score is way higher than the critic score, which I think says something about how much people love and respect what the team did here. And number 5 is Clair Obscur Expedition 33, created by a few former Ubisoft devs who wanted to focus on a passion project. Sandfall Interactive was formed in 2019. Their inspiration was nothing less than the Final Fantasy series, as well as Persona, among other things. These are all big-budget games that aren't easily replicated, especially by Western developers. There's been a lot of attempts by larger studios to emulate the appeal of a JRPG, and most have failed. Interestingly enough, the Final Fantasy games that influenced the team the most weren't the NES or the SNES era games, but later, like Final Fantasy X stuff with the cutting-edge production values for its time. Trying to do a modern-day version of that was never going to be easy, but against all odds, Clair Obscur pulled it off. I think people who were really clued in on the game knew it was going to be something special. I distinctly remember reading some random Reddit comment calling their shot, saying the French had made 2025's game of the year, and it came out, and yeah, it's easily one of the best games of the year. And this has been a stacked year for games, so that's saying something. One thing Clair Obscur remember is that many games that try to be epic forget it moves fast. Those old JRPGs were pretty fast. Story segments were short, even when they started with FMVs. In fact, FMVs made it necessary for story segments to be short because they took up a ton of space. Battles sometimes could last for only a few seconds. They were constantly introducing new locations and progressing the plot. There wasn't a whole lot of wasted time, and that's one of the reasons Clair Obscur is so great. It's fast, it's well paced, it keeps the adventure moving, which encourages you to keep playing. Make no mistake, it is 100% a JRPG too. It's got an overworld, it's got party members with their own unique abilities, turn-based battles, it's intentionally old school but introduces some innovative new mechanics. The big one is including a parry, which in 2025 could be considered cliche, but the way they implement it in a turn-based battle system here, it's just perfect. Parries are hard to pull off, but really powerful when you do. The active elements of the combat keep things engaging without being too much of a slog. It's a balancing act that the game manages to pull off. Same goes for the story. Really dramatic, but also elements of humanity, even humor to keep it from being non-stop misery. The Frenchness of the whole thing gives it a nice, unique character, too. The soundtrack, just an all-timer. It's one of those lightning in a bottle games that we've praised probably too much, but it deserves it. It's a hell of an accomplishment. And number 4 is Alan Wake. It's going to be tough to not talk about this for like 15 minutes on its own. Remedy's been around for a long time. They've been making great games for years and years and years. Control was their breakout success, at least their recent one, because before that, the first Alan Wake was a big hit. Max Payne was a big hit. They have hits, and they get big. The fact that they're capable of making a good game that resonates with people, it's not really the miracle. What is just how freaking weird Alan Wake 2 is. It's Remedy unleashed, doing whatever the hell they want for an audience of one. Like, it's audacious that they were able to make such a big budget game with such a singular vision that is so intentionally off-putting.
The mask was the key.
Usually there's someone around to say no or to tone something down, but the problem is that guy is the guy who makes the games. He's in them. I don't know, unless this game was somehow even more baffling and somebody did say tone it down, I don't know. It's a video game equivalent of Twin Peaks: The Return, a project that deliberately tests its audience and subverts the expectations in sometimes really frustrating ways. I mean, there's no other way to describe the entire film that is in this game, or basically Alan Wake's entire gameplay segment, so the many bits that don't seem to have to do with anything. Remember how the sheriff shows up at the start and then disappears and appears randomly in the dark place for some reason, and it never gets resolved or seems to have anything to do with the events of the game? That's one bizarre loose end they throw at you, and there's a lot more. And knowing Remedy, yes, they will deal with it somewhere. Might be in Control 2, might be in Alan Wake 3, might be in 10 years, might be in 20. Who freaking knows? But the game is really solid. It's Remedy we're talking about here. These guys have a certain baseline of quality that is expected. Control is a game that's weird, but is able to ground all the craziness with relatable characters. I mean, Alan Wake 2, you spend half the game completely unmoored from reality. It is as art house as a AAA game can get, and the fact that they were able to make something that works is a minor miracle. I mean, I think a lot of what really helped that along was leaning into survival horror, like inventory management type stuff, because you end up having to think about practicality when there's a bunch of just insane shit happening around you. And I think that's a large part of why it works. But, I mean, I'm not going to explain it fully. It's an amazing, amazing game. A once-in-a-generation game. I cannot wait for Control 2. Because these games all share a universe, that's where a lot of this stuff is going to go. Control 2 is the next Remedy game. Like, Remedy is a connected universe. And their games progress a story that's happening everywhere.
I sat in the writer's room and wrote a story. Initiation. To project myself through the dark place, to look for a way out. The story had brought me here, brought me nowhere. Looped me back. I was writing the story. And in the story, I now stepped into the writer's room. But there was no one here writing it.
At number 3 is Metroid Dread. By 2021, it seemed like the Metroid franchise was pretty much done. There was the remake of Metroid 2, but that was it. Metroid Prime 4 seemed like it was never happening, so, it was honestly crazy to think a game called Dread, which got a mention in Metroid Prime 3 back in 2007, was ever going to actually happen. That was years after that game was indefinitely delayed or dead or whatever. Dread was originally going to be a follow-up to Fusion on the Game Boy Advance, but for whatever reason that never happened. It was never officially canceled though, so certain diehards continue to hold out hope against all reason. A candle in the storm, hoping the ship will safely come to port, which it eventually did when Metroid Dread finally came out in 2021, which is really, really good too. Like, it's incredible that it came out, but it's even more remarkable is just how excellent it is. It was developed by Mercury Steam, who made Samus Returns, which was all right. It's a good remake, but not mind-blowing. Dread, in contrast, is just a massive step up. It's a better game in just about every way, beside the somewhat divisive Emmy robot segments, but I like them. Whatever. It's a fantastic game, though, that, regardless of if you like those segments, is a fantastic game, and it found critical and commercial success. The Metroid series had been gone for so long, and it finally was back. For fans, the game is nothing short of a miracle. The developers really stepped up in a way nobody could have anticipated, and while it probably doesn't still live up to multiple decades of hype surrounding the name Dread, I don't care. It came out so much better than anybody could have guessed it would. And number 2 is Signalis. This is an interesting one because when it originally came out, the critical response was a bit lukewarm. Over the years, though, opinions have, of course, shifted, and a lot of people see it as a modern horror masterpiece. Some of that may come down to the way that the game's been modified and updated since its initial launch, but I think there's more to it. In almost every way, Signalis is an intentional throwback horror experience. It's got fixed camera angles, a protagonist with optional tank controls, an extremely limited inventory, and a focus on exploration and puzzles over combat. There's enemies, but you're mostly avoiding them rather than fighting them, as your resources are thin and the monsters just keep coming back. Basically, it's an old-school survival horror game, but with the addition of a sharp anime art style and bizarre plot that, it's some unholy combination of Ghost in the Shell and Silent Hill. It's a sci-fi psychological horror brought in some of that Resident Evil goofiness. What's miraculous is just, not that it was made at all, but that it managed to catch on or remain noteworthy. A lot of flash-in-the-pan indie games get a lot of buzz in a week and then everyone moves on. Signalis remains in the conversation. Its legend continues to grow even to this day, and I think a lot of that comes down to the game's unique style and presentation. It's also just a really good example of the genre. Signalis really captures what made those 5th-generation horror games so great, but it adds a bit of modern edge to keep things fresh. And finally, at number 1, it's Chained Echoes. Look at the top-rated games of 2022, and you see massive games like Elden Ring and God of War Ragnarok, Horizon Forbidden West, games made by some of the biggest studios in the industry. And then there's this one you might not have heard of sitting there among them, a little indie RPG, developed by one guy called Chained Echoes, primarily by one guy anyway. Tons of these little fan RPGs come out on Steam on an almost daily basis, and most of them go completely unnoticed. Even a lot of the more ambitious ones don't really hold up. To be fair, we're talking about games mostly made by amateurs trying to ape their favorite games from their youth. Expectations from these games are not all that high. Chained Echoes, at first glance, looks like one of those completely forgettable RPG Maker games, but it's much more than that. There's a reason why this is somehow at the top-rated short list of 2022. It's shockingly good. It's fully featured. It has some impressively detailed pixel art. Like, it's a full-scale SNES/early PS1 style role-playing game that's mostly inspired by stuff like Xenogears and Suikoden 2. If you know anything about those games, you know they were dreaming big with Chained Echoes, and they managed to pull it off.